Why you need boundaries? Have you ever played a board game and things got really, really nasty? Do you remember Monopoly? That game seemed designed to create family blowups, especially over the holidays. Have you asked yourself why? Usually it all starts when people don't stick to the original rules, they start making up rules, or when players don't talk things over thoroughly before the game begins. Often players refuse a fair trade with another player on a whim or just to upset somebody, and the interactions get sour. When somebody achieved dominance of all the property and then everybody else was bankrupted. So boundaries in your life are kind of the rules of a board game. And if you think about it, rules are necessary to balance the game. And rules teach players how to play together. Rules also prevent players from achieving their goals too quickly and to have fair judgment between opponents. Also, rules need to be understood to make the game most fun, right? And to prevent others from changing or making up the rules in their favor. And that keeps, it avoids fights and disagreements. So why are we so careful about fair play, sportsmanship, and balance in board games? And yet, it is alarming that we often live without rules when it comes to our own lives. Boundaries are just like the rules of the game of life. And they are necessary, they are vital to reclaim your agenda. Yet there are a lot of reasons why we struggle with boundaries. Like I started learning about boundaries only a few years back. So let me tell you why. Let me give you the most important ones. So first of all is that awareness. We don't know where our boundaries are. We only know that there was a boundary and that boundary was crossed when we feel angry, when we feel resentment. And usually when those rules, our personal rules, are violated. And these rules could be either expressed or unexpressed expectations that we have. And this is very important to know because sometimes we haven't communicated what are our expectations, or sometimes we don't know, right? That awareness that I was talking about. And especially this is the case when we grew up in authoritarian or enmeshed families. So that was my experience. Another problem that we have with boundaries is that we have a lot of mindset blocks. We have a lot of beliefs. So for example, sometimes we believe that if we dare to set boundaries, people will think that we are selfish, that we are unkind, that we are uncaring, or that we are difficult, right? Have you ever been in that situation where you fear people will think that you're difficult? And we don't want to feel guilty, right? We are afraid to rock the boat. We are afraid to steer the pot. We are afraid that we will offend or make people uncomfortable, or we fear that we won't be liked, that we will be judged, that we will be rejected. And that's when it becomes even more difficult to change, right? But boundaries are what we must do to take care for ourselves when others don't. Boundaries are believing that our thoughts, our wants, our needs, our feelings are just as important as everyone else's. Boundaries are also, it's just stating the rules to play nice in our space, right? And having the courage to remove others if they don't respect those rules. You do that in a game. So why don't we in our lives, right? So think about it this way. We would not tolerate a lack of rules in a board game. You wouldn't play a board game without rules. It wouldn't be fun. So why do we do it in our lives, right? And there are a lot of misconceptions about what boundaries are. This is one of the biggest problems. So let me clarify some of those misconceptions. So boundaries are not ultimatums. They are not requirements that people change, right? It's not about controlling people. It's not about saying no to everything all of the time. And it's not about putting up walls and keeping people out. This is why sometimes people don't want to do that, because they are afraid they're going to lose people. But actually, boundaries, they show people where the door is. So it's not about putting a wall and keep people out. It's about showing them how to play nice, showing them where the door is, so they can enjoy the game, so we can both enjoy the game. And if you think about your life, the ultimate goal is to be authentic with your yes, and not to do things out of obligation, out of resented obligation, or tolerating poor behavior to keep the peace. We are always showing people how to treat us. So here's an uncomfortable truth. Often, the reason why people are treating us poorly or taking advantage of us is simply because we are letting them, right? And that is hard to hear, but not letting people know what's not okay with us, it is the same as giving them permission to treat us however, whatever they want. So we have to remember that it is not other people's responsibility to set boundaries for us. It is our responsibility. And here's where I want to share a perspective shift with you. Because if you're a people pleaser, I'm a recovering people pleaser. You should not be afraid of losing people. You should be more afraid of losing yourself in that people-pleasing process. And this was me for a long time. I always was trying to make everybody happy, to be agreeable, to be thought about in a certain way. I was trying to control how would people see me. And this is what people-pleasing is people misleading because we're trying to make people connect with a version of us that is not totally real. So boundary work is self-worth work. And I had to learn the hard way, because when you keep quiet to avoid conflict, you start a war inside of yourself. It's not that you keep quiet and it goes away. We start a war inside of ourselves. And that war is going to affect your physical, mental, emotional health. And 90% of all disease is rooted in stress, is rooted in not having boundaries. And in my case, that pattern of behavior made me more cancer prone. And that is not, woo-woo talk. I read a lot of scientific articles that report that people that are people pleasers, that have a high social desirability, that sometimes repress emotions or suppress emotions, that always are trying to make people happy, they are more cancer prone. That psychological profile is more cancer prone. So ask yourself, in terms of your health, your peace, your authenticity, your freedom, your time, what is a lack of boundaries costing you? And if you need help finding out, send me a message and we'll hop on a short